Hello everyone, welcome back to the Time On podcast. If you're a new listener, welcome aboard. If you've been with us from the very start, welcome back. As always, I'm joined by my brilliant co-host, Nick. But today it's a bit different. I'm a bit lost for words, actually. We have an Essendon living legend in my living room. The one and only Mr. Scotty Lucas. Scott, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Scott, we are honoured that you've given us your time for tonight. We've got some new listeners, no doubt, as well, tuning in. So, yeah, we're privileged to have an Essendon great join us in Darcy's living room.
Means a lot coming from a Collingwood supporter.
Thank you. I'm quite touched by that.
Well, you're the first former or current player to appear on the show, so we're quite honoured to have you here and have your insights today.
Well, if I'm to be totally truthful, we probably owe it to my wife and a working relationship she has with Nick. So
We do.
The threads that bind.
Unbeknownst, I actually had no idea she was married to you until years later, probably 2 months ago. So when I reached out.
Not something she advertises.
No, definitely
not. not that it's any issue, but no. But occasionally, I think someone might say, "Oh, I'd link the surname." Obviously, it's quite a while ago since I played, but there's still some diehards out there, I think.
Totally respect that.
Well, Scott, today we wanted to discuss your fascinating career on and off the field and just get a broad view of what's happening in football and sports today.
So we noticed as well Sunday you put in a double shift. I think you had the SEN Crunch Time, commentated the probably the best game of the round.
Yeah, the riveting North Melbourne and Hawthorn game.
It wasn't great. You've done your research there, gents. Yes, I done a little bit of radio with SEN this year, and I have done over the years a little bit. Still involved in the game in sports management, so it's great. Look, football's been very good to me in that regard. That I still, having finished 13, 14 years ago, I'm still employed in a game, and a game that I love. And I mean, so many people love it. I'm sitting here chatting to you guys who have a great love for football and are doing a podcast because you just love talking about the game.
Absolutely. So we do, and your contemporaries at SEN, they love it too, but except the box is falling apart. What happened on Sunday? Poor Matt Hill, his chair's falling down.
Yeah, there's a couple of boys, and they just put a little bit too much weight on one corner of the seat, and it just popped.
Well, I did see that because Matt was tucking into a pie as it fell apart.
Oh, yeah, they do, and it's funny. Everyone knows now because all the boxes have got in-box cameras, and they stream live or they put shots up through social media. It's early on, you just go and wear whatever you like and do and whatever it is that you want.
Yeah, but
you're
not
now,
safe.
Exactly.
Yeah, social media.
Everything is captured. But no, look, it wasn't a great game of football. But look, it's a bit like I'm not a golfer, but many golfers will say, the worst day at golf is better than the best day at work.
Yeah.
So my wife, Georgina, sometimes, looks at me with dirty eyes when I say, I'm off to work today. What are you really doing? Well, I'm going to watch the football and I'm going to talk about it. So, yeah, look, very fortunate in that regard. Wasn't a great game, but still. I always find in a lot of, we're always quick to criticise at times about footy and the state of the game and so forth. Look, I think it's in really good shape at the moment. And I don't entirely disagree that there was a period of time where it was harder to watch the way that the game was being played. But I find that I've always been able to take out of it the good in any game because I really just do love the game. But no, the standard of footy's at a very high level at the moment. And really it's coaches have bought in, and time again you hear and you talk to clubs around a philosophy of, we want to score, we want to be aggressive with our ball movement. And Hawthorn are one team that are trying to do that. They take the corridor, they move it as quickly as they can. They're happy to wear turnovers, be aggressive at all times. And, Hawthorn are doing it at the other end of the ladder because they're at a different stage in their development. But we're seeing how well Collingwood are doing it. I mean, no more team moves the ball aggressively, but at the same stage, defend extremely well. So they've got a great balance at the moment, and they'll be very hard to beat.
No, definitely. It was a pretty fascinating round of results. What are what's your biggest taking from this weekend?
Tom Hawkins likes playing against Essendon.
God, I wish you didn't say that.
Yeah, that's one
It's
of
a love
them.
affair. Well, I think it was 18 of the last 21 the Cats have won against the Bombers.
Yep.
Yeah, look, they'd have very strong records against a lot of times because they've won a lot of games over the last few years, but they're one team that Essendon have clearly, and Essendon haven't had a strong era without question. So, but Geelong have really got hold of them several times, and Tomahawk was central to that. I guess the one disappointing thing was the start, wasn't it? They played each other, 10, 12 weeks ago, and they were about 6 goals down at quarter time, and they got rolled by 6 in the end. Like, their start just let them down. So if you could have taken anything out of that, it was that we need to start well, and yet the same thing happened again. And we saw the week before Geelong did it to North Melbourne. So they're a fast-starting team. It's a funny, often used, come ready to play, and the Bombers were off the pace early.
Well, to all the Bombers fans listening, what can they change going to Friday night's matchup with the Doggies? What do they need to work on specifically?
They need to start better, and they were out of the contest, and they looked like they got muscled around the football. In saying that, though, the Dogs are a very different team again. So, the area that Geelong were able to expose Essendon, perhaps the Dogs don't do so much. I guess the one area you look at is, big tall forwards can get hold of the Bombers. So you really got to be wary of Norton, and then they've got, Jamara Ugle-Hagan. Lobb was out of the team. Darcy came in, so they'll probably bring Lobb back in to try and stretch the Bombers down back. I think it's the reason why the Bombers have got an interest in Ben Mackay from what you read, because of that the tall forward at other teams can get hold of the Bombers, so they need a real, as they use the term, the big gorilla defender. They really do need one of those.
Well, we've talked enough about the other 17 teams, Scott. We need to talk about you and the Essendon Football Club. But first, let's rewind back in time to 1993.
We'll have a bounce, but that's all we'll have. Kevin Sheedy has done it again for the Bombers. There's the bounce, Somerville, and there's the siren. Victory for the Bombers.
'93. The number one film in the world is Jurassic Park. Nirvana released their final album, In Utero. Essendon are premiers. And a young Scott Lucas is invited to the AFL Draft Combine and develops a friendship that'll last a lifetime. What do you remember of that time, Scott, around 93, 94, and the friendships you created and how you came through as a young man from Geelong?
Well, it's funny. The 93 grand final, I was helping my dad paint a couple of rooms at home that day. So you just remember what you're doing on certain days. And I had an under-18 grand final the next day. It was Sunday. So I played in the Hampden League, and they didn't want to go up against the AFL. So I actually had a grand final the next day. So that's my memories of 93. And then, 12 months later, I'd played a year with the Geelong Falcons, lucky enough to be invited along to the Combine, and met Matthew Lloyd. At no stage then did I think we'd end up at the same club, but it's an amazing coincidence that formed a really good friendship off a weekend. I think similar that we both played as forwards in what was it back then, TAC Cup. He was at the Western Jets, I was the Geelong Falcons. So you immediately start talking about footy and so forth, and then what is it, a matter of a couple of months later, we end up at Essendon together, and then fortunate enough, school for 12 months together, a career together, finished on the same amount of games, and a long friendship as a result of that. So it's that's why you play, the people you meet and the friendships you make, and you want team success, and all of us crave that. But not everyone's lucky. You need a certain amount of luck for that, but the friendships
Absolutely.
are what always endure across all clubs.
Well, speaking on friendship, how did you make that decision? You wanted to move away, growing up on a dairy farm, to then move to the inner northwest suburbs, live close by to Matty Lloyd. It's a massive decision to make as a young kid. Yeah,
so I guess the first thing is it's a lot of, when you're playing at that level of sort of NAB League or Coates Hire or TAC Cup, it keeps changing. I think most kids that play in that, having got to that level, have dreams of playing in the AFL. And for those at that level, it's a little bit more real than perhaps playing local football because you're that one level off. So it was certainly always a dream of mine, but at no stage do you think it's going to be a reality. And then you're drafted. So that's the first step. And I mean, going into the draft, all I hoped was to stay in Victoria, specifically, well, Melbourne or Geelong. And then to be picked by Essendon, I mean, I saw the positive that it was on the western side of Melbourne, and I grew up southwest Vic, so it was better than being on the far side of Melbourne for travel and so forth. So a strong club then. Sheeds had been coach for maybe 14 or 15 years, so they were a very strong club, good membership, successful club. So I felt very fortunate. They'd won the flag in 93. They'd had a bad 94, missed the finals. I think traded some players to Fremantle as part of them coming into the competition, which gave them pick 4 in the draft. And then from that, they also had pick 1 in the 16-year-old draft. So from that, they were able to draft myself and Lloydie, and then also in that draft added, Blumfield, Carousella and Moorcroft. So 5 premiership players in one draft, I think, was a pretty successful draft for the club when you look back on it.
Well, Scott, you're a player manager yourself. What would you make of this trade that Essendon made with Fremantle? One of the most lopsided in history now. We've had 20 years to look back at it. Scott Lucas and Matthew Lloyd for Tony Delaney, Todd Ridley, Dale Kickett, and Russell Williams. Lucas and Lloyd kicked 1,400 goals combined.
Do you know any of those names?
Yeah, no, I do. I think Essendon would be comfortable with how it worked out.
Extremely comfortable. It's funny because I also joke about it. I think Fremantle at the time were pretty charitable. I think Collingwood picked something like, for pick 29, we ended up getting Brodie Holland and Jimmy Clement. I mean, Clement was probably one of our best defenders ever in the 2000s era. So
it was a great player. And I think they overlooked the rights to Andrew McLeod.
I think they did, yes.
Yeah. So Adelaide were able to pick him up.
Well, you made a brilliant combination with Matthew Lloyd in the early 2000s, and throughout your entire careers. I just want to play a short snippet from a much more successful podcast called Dylan Friends, and a couple of words that Matthew had about you.
2-part question here. Favourite teammate and most respected teammate?
Yeah.
Unless they're the same person.
Yeah, so it's tricky one. So I've got Scott Lucas is someone who just one of the great people that I've ever met in football. Underrated, for best and fairest at centre half back, best and fairest at centre half forward. But with myself and James there, I don't think he's ever spoken about in a way that he should, is how good his career was. He's just been a wonderful friend of mine. Dustin Fletcher, one of the great people you'll ever meet as well. Humble, the time and the care he has for people, asking questions. Someone said to me, it often says about footballers, what they do? I'll ask about them, but this person never ever asks, how's your kids going? How's your family going? It's always about them, whereas Scott Lucas and Dustin Fletcher are 2 blokes that just humble champions and have been lifelong friends for me.
What are those words meant to you, Scott? To hear a great friend say those nice things about you?
Look, they are very nice words, and I'd certainly back that up with Lloydie. I mean, he's clearly been an outstanding footballer, a great player, but also a great friend. And I think he summed it up really well, of his reflection on why you play, for the people you meet. And we're fortunate that at a club we had team success with a great bunch of guys. It was a bonus that there was a lot of very, very good footballers there, but more importantly, a great bunch of guys.
Well, you entered that Essendon team coming off the back of a premiership in 1993, quite a star-studded team, and then establishing, making your mark in the team. You debuted in 1996.
96,
on
yeah.
Anzac Day,
Yep.
in front of, I think, 87,000 fans. What was that like? Well, how do you prepare for something like that?
You go to work the day before and put down a sub-floor. So I was working. So it was a very different game back then. I think footy, most draft picks come in and play quite a bit early on. But back then, lists were a bit bigger, so you could be a bit more patient. And also, we were able to be drafted as 17-year-olds. So effectively, a lot of us were 12 months younger than when the draftees come in now. So we were more raw in a sense and more underdeveloped, so needed some time in the gym. It's funny, though, in 95, though, Lloydie made his debut during the school holidays.
Oh,
I'm sure it was almost like he can do, because we were playing school football that year on a Wednesday.
yep.
And then we'd back up and play twos on the weekend for about 6 or 8 weeks. So I'm sure the club thought, well, he won't have had midweek footy for a couple of weeks. We'll get him in. I think he kicked 3 on debut in 95. But, yeah, my first game was Anzac Day 96. And, look, usually you get a game because someone gets injured or you're in extremely good form yourself or the team gets smacked. My reason for debut was the latter. I think they played in Adelaide on a Saturday night, got smacked by 80 or 90 by the Crows, and then being Anzac Day and a fixed date. I think it was a Thursday, so a 5-day break. So I was working then as an apprentice carpenter. So I think we trained the day before at 10 a.m. Wasn't aware I was playing, got the nod from Sheeds, went off to work in the afternoon and then played the next day. So really different back then in terms of now you see, every guy that debuts, they film them doing the call home, and it's almost you got to get. Whereas mine is I think Sheets came up and said, "You're in, young fella."
Hey, mate.
Yeah, good.
Did you just stroll over to you on a Thursday training? Like, all right, Scott, you're in this week. Is that simple?
Yeah,
as that?
I think he strolled over in the warm up the day before and just said, "Yeah, you're playing tomorrow." I said, "Oh, that's good."
Yeah, there'll be a big crowd. Get ready.
Yeah, well, that's right. Well, my first experience for Anzac was the year before in 95, and that was the year it was a lockout and 15,000 didn't get in.
Yes.
So I certainly had a really good understanding of the significance and the crowd and what the day meant. So, yeah, it was a huge honour to play my first game on Anzac Day, and we've seen what that day has become, both for football and certainly paying tribute. So, yeah, significant day.
Well, you start breaking into the side 95, 96. In 1998, you kicked 49 goals. How long did it take you to feel comfortable at AFL level? Because you see a lot of big key forwards, it takes them 5-6 years. When did you start feeling that, okay, I can really start to take over games?
96, I was able to play a couple of games that I felt that because you're not sure. You get your first game, you go, gee, I might be just never get there and just tick a game off. But I was able to play a couple in 96 that gave me some confidence. And then in 97, I played each game. We had some injuries that year and went from prelim in 96 to missing the finals in 97. So a disappointing year for the club. I'm sure that enabled me in a sense to play all the games. If we're having a really strong year, at times when you weren't playing as well in those early games, your form might come into question at selection. So I got a full year and got confidence through that. And then 98, started to play more consistently week in, week out, and felt that I, started to belong at the level. And Sheeds was big on, you need at least 50 games to start to feel comfortable and get your consistency. And that was through 98, I played the 50 games. So, yeah, that was the season when, a lot of us started to have a greater impact. We got back up into the finals, got beaten by North, first final. We were still a bit off it, but I think the club more broadly started to see that with some younger players there, we could build into something special.
Yeah, and the following year, so 1999, you suffered a leg break. I think it was against Adelaide early in the season. I mean, tell me about that. Did you think for a time there you wouldn't return to your physical best?
Well, you always question that. I think any player does when they have a significant injury. What's it look like when you get back? You're back in your medical people and so forth. Yeah, but never great timing to get injured. But missed a lot of football in that year. And that coincided with the team playing great football. So disappointing. Prelim. Really should have won it. Just had it. Most things that could go wrong in a game of football did. Not taking anything away from Carlton, but I think if we played Carlton 10 times, we'd probably win 8. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those 2 that they got us that day.
Were you close to returning that final series?
I played 3 or 4 in the 2s coming back from the leg. I felt I was right. should have got picked but didn't. But look, I wasn't at full fitness, in fairness. So I think probably the selectors saw that. Still think I could have helped. But, it was just disappointing for the team and the club not to get the job done. And I think that was, the start of, the focus and the mission that we're on in 2000.
Well, I wanted to ask about your wife. She's a North Melbourne fan. What were the things like when North ended up winning the premiership?
Were the celebrations a bit subdued, or how did that go at the time?
No, by then. So I didn't know Georgina in '96 when she was, a North supporter and they win the flag. '99, we'd been going out for a couple of years then, and sort of I think the North Melbourne had sort of softened, and the Essendon bit was there. It would have been interesting if it was an Essendon North grand final.
Yeah,
I probably wouldn't ask for not wanting to know the real answer. Yeah.
Well, we know your father-in-law, Norm, is a bookmaker. Did he make a pretty penny off Essendon not winning the premiership?
I don't know that year, but my story with him, though, is he saved a lot of money when in 2000, he laid the Bombers to go through undefeated, and it was a big payout.
Jeez.
And it got to round 21. Or the second last game. I think it was round 20. Sometimes it's 22 games, 23 weeks.
Right.
Anyway, played North in the second last game, and he stood to lose a lot. So there was no happier person than Norm Short when Chris Grant kicked the goal late in the game and they got the win.
36th possession. Over left foot. He kicked the goal to bring him back into the game. It's a great kick. He's kicked it. A magnificent effort. Rowan Smith's come onto the ground. They've done it. They've won it. That gets them in the finals. The Doggies are in the finals, and the great run has come to an end.
And I think from a football point of view, it helped us. It certainly didn't hurt us. Just gave us a chance to refocus. The Dogs had dropped a lot of players behind the ball, which back then was different. Now it's quite common. But we didn't handle that all that well. I'm sure the coaches probably were happy to let it unfold, and if we get rolled, so be it. A good chance to reset. If we manage to work our way through it, which we didn't well enough, then so be it. And then from then on, we really, foot to the floor and had such a convincing final series.
Well, do you subscribe to the idea that sometimes you need a loss to remember what it feels like, or the heartbreak of '99 was still fresh in your mind?
I think the loss certainly didn't hurt. Yeah. I reckon each situation's unique to the group, but I reckon it's a chance. And coaching, part of that is how you review it. I mean, you wouldn't like a series of narrow wins to be, don't wallpaper over the cracks. So that can be an issue. But I think most clubs are pretty good at addressing what they need to. Because what did Geelong win last year with 16 in a row?
They did, yeah.
So you look at it and there's all those examples. But for every one of those, there's a few examples of teams winning all through the year and getting to the grand final and getting rolled.
Absolutely.
Even in American sports, the New England Patriots had
Yeah,
an undefeated season and lost the
that's
Super Bowl
right.
in the last 2 minutes
The
of the
Jets,
game.
the
Giants.
the Giants a couple of times, yes.
Talk to me about 1999. You lose the prelim. Now, Kevin Sheedy, if I'm correct, he's forced you guys to then attend the granny to watch the game. What was that like? So you basically started, I guess, your pre-season and flag assault that day.
Yeah, we did. We did go. I think it also tied in that the twos played at the grand final as well. But no, more specifically, we were there to watch, the grand final and what we'd missed out on, and also learn, pick up things, take in the day, and then because I think it was a little bit less unfamiliar the following year because we had at least gone to the game, and I know it's very different, but I think it meant something, even if it is only small. But yeah, we did. We had a meeting. We went out for dinner after that game, the grand final, and just had a chat about how pre-season looked and what the season looks like and what you need to do and mindset, philosophy and so forth. So really it did start from, very early on. And I think we approached the season all throughout the year in a really business-like manner of, unfinished business, and this is what we need to do and should do.
Well, it was the most dominant team of the modern era. I think your average winning margin of somewhere near 10 goals. Did you carry yourself each week knowing that, okay, we're much better than the opposition and we should just go out there, like you said, it's a business transaction. Let's go out there and get the 4 points? Or was there ever a bit of umming and ahhing, like, oh, North Melbourne are good, Carlton are good, or just we're better than everyone else?
I think for all but one game, we knew that we were better than the opposition and we'll win if we play near the level. I reckon the one game where we went in going, this will be interesting, was when we played Carlton in about round 20. We'd won 19 in a row if it was, in fact, round 20. Carlton had won maybe 13 or 14 in a row. And that was the game. And Cooter had played an amazing stretch of football.
He was
career
favourite for
best,
the Brownlow at that point.
Yeah,
and
I
Disney
reckon.
End of the year.
I reckon he played close to the best 10 or 12 weeks of
patch.
anyone that through the era that I played. Like, he was unstoppable. He was getting 35, which would be now like getting 50 every
back
week.
then, they had so much more weight. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So going into that game, that was the hype when I think both teams thought the team that wins tonight will be really hard to beat in the flag. And early on, Cooter got injured. I think he collided, PCL, collided with Jason Johnson, who had a habit of colliding with players and them coming off second best. He was such a tough, hard nut.
Well, he ended up giving us cooking classes at Pegs, didn't he?
He did,
Best
actually.
Yeah. There you go.
Don't know if that's still his day job.
No, I don't think so.
He was involved. Yeah, he was involved in the hospitality industry
right.
for a while. Real estate now for Jono. But yeah, he was a super player. But collided with Cooter, came off second best, and really Carlton's hopes were really not extinguished, but diminished severely on the back of the Cooter injury. He didn't play again, and we won that night, got the confidence, and away we went.
You could argue forever who is the best team of all time, but as Jason said earlier, this is the best season we've ever seen. Kevin Sheedy joins Dick Reynolds as the most successful club in over 100 years at this famous club. And they have won their 16th premiership. And is there a better story than James Herod? Well, maybe Barnesy and Wallace get close.
Look forward to 2001, top of the ladder again, pretty much the same nucleus that just won a premiership. What changed in that season? Was it just that you became too comfortable with yourselves after winning the premiership, or Brisbane just came through and you thought this is going to be a great, great side for the next 5 years?
I think the latter. I don't think there was a level of there's a level of knowing what to do and feeling comfortable that you're good enough to win. I think more confidence and comfort, but more importantly, we got injuries at the wrong time. We're a little bit banged up going into the finals and the grand final. Not to take anything away from Brisbane, and they were flying at the time. They were a great team. And back then, like, hindsight's a wonderful thing. You don't realise how they were a really good team then, but history says they were on the verge of being a great team. They won 3 in a row. We were coming off our best football, and they were still getting close to that. And look, their midfield alone finished with 3 Brownlow medalists.
It was incredible. I mean, that centre circle, you had Acker, Simon Black, Michael Voss, you had Luke Power running through it. Yeah, incredible.
Yeah.
Nigel Lappin.
That's right. A young Jonathan Brown up forward, Lepic down back with Mel Michael. They were a really strong team and thoroughly deserved their victory. We're up at half time. I reckon we were about 20 points up.
It was about 3 goals, I think.
Yeah. And Alistair Lynch kicked a late goal. Now, we were lucky to be up by that because they'd missed quite a few and we'd been accurate. But if you do go in with 20, you never know. But I reckon that last goal gave them a bit of confidence, and then they took over the game in the third quarter.
Did you think after that 2001 grand final loss, like that could be your last sort of shot at contending for a flag? Because I think there's a few list changes in the subsequent 2 years. I lost some key personnel through some trade periods. I think
Salary
some
cap squeezes.
Yeah, we'll call them squeezes.
Good, well done. That certainly hurt. We lost a lot of quality players through that. You never think it's your last chance, no. You wouldn't do anything differently if you did know. But no, you just think you always back yourself in. And look, Essendon had, '96 prelim, then '97 out of the finals, back in '98 in a final, then prelim, grand final. You go, okay, well, if we're down for 2 or 3,
We'll slip
bounce.
back up. Yep.
But in time, the competition became, as it was designed to do through draft and salary cap, it became more and more even. And, the one thing, that's one element, but I think back then you could have a greater advantage through your coaching. Now I think even now it's more even. The expertise at each club is so tight, and the playing list. That's why, what is there, 1 or 2 games between 5th and 14th at the moment?
Yeah, it's an absolute logjam.
Yeah. And I mean, it's what everyone wants. Everyone's a great chance to win. But back then you could have 3 or 4 games where, half rat power you could win.
Yeah.
You had soft,
Absolutely. It's
now
such a
there's
professional-
no easy game. That's right. And the difference between the best and the worst athlete at each club is negligible. Whereas back then you had the guys that were a bit off it, good footballers, but, need to be a bit more professional, and you had the elites. Whereas now it's such a fine line.
Yeah, 100%.
And, it's a huge effort by the players now. You look at how much time and effort they put into it.
So between 2003 and 2006, Essendon didn't have as much success, but do you feel like you became a more complete player? 2-time Best and Fairest winner, playing centre-half back and centre-half forward. How would you sum up your later career?
Well, I think it ties in with when you should play your best football. Really, that's through that 25 to 28, 30 is sort
you've
of...
had about 7 pre-seasons under your belt.
Yeah. So it's funny. It sort of worked in, at the opposite end to, the team started to find it. And part of that was, some of our quality players through that period became old. Like 2000 was their prime years of football, and then they get older, and we just didn't have, quite simply, the quality that came through below that to pick up the slack, and just the list turnover and so forth. So, that certainly made it different, but at the same time, you're sort of in, your prime years of football. So perhaps played better football personally, but it was disappointing in that aspect that it didn't tie in with more team success late.
But did you feel yourself becoming more of a leader as well as the team became less successful, but you became one of the older players on the list?
Yeah, you naturally do. I think most players do as they get to a point in their career. It just evolves, and you pick up the slack from those that have taught you and who have led you extremely well. You learn a lot from them, and you like to pass that wisdom on to those that come through below you.
I was going to say, in 2006, you kick your career high goals. I think it was 67 goals for the year. Coincidentally, Matty Lloyd goes down with injury. Does his
that's when you talk about, the sum of all your parts.
Well, you get to play full forward as well.
Yeah, look, individually it makes it a bit easier, but it's no good for your team. And, we all play for team success. I'd rather kick less. Lloyd plays, he kicks his 70 or 80 or 90, which it usually was, and you win finals or a chance to play off. So, it's sort of, the goals have to come from somewhere, and your role changes and you become more of a focus for your teammates. So it gives you more opportunity to kick a few more goals. Yeah, no question about that. But the big picture point of view, it was really disappointing not to have him out there, because it was one of his prime years, and he spent it with a hamstring tendon injury.
So at no point did you say to Matt, like, oh, it's not that hard as it looks. It's kicked 60 goals. I've never played here before.
When you come back, big fella, you can just push out a bit. I'll tell you, I've got the square now.
Space for you.
Back in the space for me.
Exactly. I back in 07, I just rolled back out to the half forward line, and he went back to full forward. It's funny. As an under 18, he played
At the Jets.
Centre half forward, and I played deeper at full forward. Yet
right.
we get to Essendon and it flipped.
Well, he fancied himself that grand final day. I think you kicked 6 and you beat the Jets. We're playing for the Falcons. Is that right?
No, preliminary final. We knocked them out in a prelim, and then we played the Northern Knights in the grand final, and we got done. Anthony Rocker had a big day. Carousella and Harford. Gary Moorcroft played as well. Yeah,
was Pebs kicking him from 65 as a 17-year-old?
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
Well, I wanted to ask you, did you ever consider a career in the US similar to the Rocker brothers?
I went, and when I finished, I did go and have a kick once, and it's funny. I have no idea whether I had a long enough leg for it. Probably not. It's so difficult. It's not funny. So let's not trivialise it and think that it's easy. Mind you, there's so many players that are in college now that could come through and kick because they've done it for longer and from a younger age. And it's such a natural thing for an Australian to do, is to kick the ball. Whereas I think for a lot, from what I can understand, the American kids that get into punting, it's usually they've failed at other positions and it's sort of the default. If I want to be on the team, this is the last chance to learn. But for the Aussies, it's just so natural for them. I did have a kick. I had a young family at the time. I thought, if I was a single guy, maybe I might have fluffed around with it for a year or two. Would have been a bit of fun, probably got me over to the US for a bit. But with that in mind, I was keen to get on with the next phase of my life. Mind you, I didn't have anyone saying, no, you'll be amazing at this. You should pursue it.
Hi everyone, hope you're enjoying our extensive chat with the legend Scott Lucas. Just want to give you a friendly reminder to like, rate and subscribe to us on Apple and Spotify podcast.
And remember, you can find us on the socials on Instagram and TikTok. It's timeon.podcast. On Twitter, a little bit edgy, timeonpodcast. And if you'd like to email the show, that's timeon.podcast@outlook.com.
Thanks for that everyone. Now back to our chat with Scotty Lucas. Well, we'll talk about the next phase of your life. When did you start getting interested in player management and the Phoenix Management Group?
Yeah, look, throughout my career, I did a building apprenticeship, was working in the building industry for quite a while. The game started to evolve into professional, which made work nigh on impossible. I had a really understanding boss who I'd been with for a while, so he was able to cut me plenty of slack, whereas someone coming into it around 2000, 2001, 2002 would never be able to start an apprenticeship or anything. But I'd a few runs on the board, understanding employer, kept doing it. And then I got halfway through my career and just thought, well, I love the game of football. How can I stay involved post-football? You look at it and you go, well, look, coaching is the obvious one, or the admin side of things. And I'm quite a, pragmatic thinker, I reckon. And I thought there's a lot of coaches that get sacked that aren't bad at it. So, job security is not high and we still see it, clubs react to situations, public pressure.
It's such a performance-based industry. It's so harsh.
Which goes beyond whether the guy's a good coach or not. Change for change's sake. So I felt a certain vulnerability to that, to go down that path. So I went down the admin path thinking it might be little bit more secure, with no thought around player management. And then an opportunity came up. I'd worked at the AFL for a little bit as an intern. I was at the Players Association for a bit. And then an opportunity came up in player management. And I looked at that as the next stage, not sure how long where it would take me, but I looked at it and thought, well, coaching is one aspect of a player's life, and then there's how does that work with family, player, manager to have the player do well. So I sort of almost looked at it as off-field coaching and keeping an involvement in the game, and I've been doing that for 12 or 13 years now and really enjoy it.
So what year did Phoenix start? Sorry?
So 2011.
2011, okay. So you retired in 2009. You and Matt played the same amount of games. Did you know that? And you retired the same year.
Yeah, I did actually.
Is that planned?
Yeah, no, look, it was just, what do I reckon? I must have had a lead. I must have led him by 2 or 3 because I reckon I didn't play the last 4 that year, and he knocked out Brad Sewell and then got 6 weeks, and he was done also, and we were left on 270 each. Yeah, but look, there's certainly a lot of differences in our career, but also a lot of parallels in that sense that, we started Essendon the same year, finished the same year, school together for a year, and played in the one area of the ground. So obviously, often names are linked.
A remarkable friendship and partnership together.
Well, that's right. And a really good chemistry on field, which I think helps. Doesn't hurt that you like one another to start with, and you spend so much time together. And not only Lloydie, but all the guys I played with up forward. Like we had Hurdy played a lot of years, and then other guys, Steve Alessio, and then Moorcroft, Blumfield, Carousella. Plenty of guys used to roll through there.
Some absolute stars you're reeling off here.
Yeah.
Did you know you were done in 2009? Because Matthew spoke about not being in love with the environment of the club and how it was heading with the coaching and the playing group. You similar in that way, or was it more your body had given up on you?
Yeah, the game mentally, I don't think it quite got to me like Lloydie has said a couple of times for him. But more the body, and more importantly, just where the coach thought you're at also. So
It's usually the most important part.
Yeah, that plays a significant part.
absolutely. How do you think you're going? Yeah, good. I've got 5 more years in me. I think you're done.
Yeah.
All right, I'm done.
Well,
not that it was like that,
You
but
were at a press conference, you said, I'm going for 3 more years. Didn't you say that?
You would have loved that.
Yeah. Look, I had an idea. You sense, when coaches, just little things you pick up on. Yeah. So I sort of sensed it was time in that regard. And in fairness, the coach was pretty upfront, Matthew Knights, throughout the year. So I had a good idea of where it was heading from a fair way out. Yep. And look, I got my opportunity as a young player, probably at the demise of an older player. It's just how the game evolves. So whilst you think you can play longer and keep going, and perhaps I could have for a bit, but, I respect the decision, and, yeah, I was extremely fortunate to play for as long as I did. So no issues there.
So I asked you about management, especially with Phoenix. Was there ever a go-home factor with you being from Geelong? Because we see it right now, a lot of players that love going to Geelong. It's a destination club.
Yeah, it is. It certainly wasn't back then in that sense, which is not to criticise Geelong. I reckon there's a bit of, over the years, Melbourne has got bigger and bigger. Geelong has got bigger also. So Geelong perhaps is more of a city now, which stands on its own 2 feet. And now perhaps Melbourne is just too big for plenty. And I think, guys do crave that lifestyle down there and by the coast and so forth.
The escape.
Yeah. But Geelong wasn't home for me in that sense, because I'm from, most of the Geelong guys that go back are Geelong people, whereas I'm from Camperdown, another sort of 90 minutes west of Geelong. So I barracked for Geelong. I identified with the city more so than perhaps Melbourne, because I'd been there a lot more and played for the Geelong Falcons. So there was that link there. But I didn't have any deep seated want to go back there. I think they may have approached at one stage, asked the question very early on in my career, but I was really happy at Essendon.
Is that part of the culture that Essendon had developed? In fact, they're a bit more successful at the time than Geelong had been?
Yeah, Geelong were pretty good. So through that, my early years, Geelong made a grand final. I probably know this more than I should because I was a Geelong supporter. They made the grand final in 95. Carlton smacked them. They were pretty good in 97, I think, and then a couple of down years. But, I just didn't have a thought to leave, really, in that sense. Like, through that period, you're always looking to win a flag. Great bunch of guys, I was
developing.
Yeah, that's right. It's a very different game from that commercial perspective now, and the way that it works with players and so forth and player movement. And a lot of it's generated by, the AFL in a sense. They want movement because it keeps the football in the papers and on the TV. And also you need movement from an equalisation perspective, in a sense that if you don't have any movement, what stops the good being great for so long and the bottom not able to come up? So you need that as well. So there's different mechanisms that mean that it's more prevalent now, and it's just part of it, which is fine. It's different to what it was, but that's okay.
Well, with 6 rounds left, you talk about movement. A couple of players under your watch which haven't signed contracts, if I'm going to ask you about them. How are we tracking with Darcy Parish?
How are we tracking? We're going along okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
That's all you can give me.
Exclusive.
Well, I don't want to weaken any position or what we're trying to angle towards in that sense, but not that it makes a hell of a lot of difference. Yeah, look, it's going okay. There's been some good discussions with Essendon.
Another player, Sean Darcy. I don't know if he's linked to any clubs, but he had an ankle injury over the weekend. How's he looking?
Ankle injury, probably miss a couple, but Sean's contracted for another year, enjoying his time in Freo. Yeah, yep.
One more. It's not contract-wise. James Sicily. I saw you watch this game on Sunday. Did you see that young Eddie Ford was reading out the stat sheet to him during the game? What did you think of that? How did James take it?
I was very proud of Sis that he kept his cool because
He
he
did,
could
he
get
really
worked.
did.
Yeah, because he could get worked up. I think the captaincy armband has been a good thing. It's almost like the little handbrake on him blowing a gasket at times. But look, he handled it well. Like the reality was, Eddie Ford was tagging him. Like such as the Sicily influence on the game, and you look at Sicily. He missed the previous 3 games. They lost them by a good margin. The game before that, he played against Brisbane. They won. Big win against Brisbane. He'd missed the week before that. He'd had 40 against St Kilda. So he's been in rare form. So they tried to shut him out of the game. As Kane Corn said, I think, on the classified last night, Sis didn't have a lot of possessions in the first quarter, but that's because North had 4 entries and Hawthorn had 25 entries. If Hawthorn had a kick straight, they'd have been 10 up at half time. And I just, you got to enjoy the young fella's spunk, but a bit misplaced perhaps.
It is. I think Kane said Eddie hadn't won a game yet, so probably save that till
Well, and I remember at the time, I couldn't believe what the free kick was for. I still can't understand. He dropped the mark and it must have been an arm chop, but I don't think he even brushed a finger.
Yeah, it was an interesting one.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there.
Neither do I.
Yeah, bit of cheek for him.
Yeah.
You might not know it, but you're a bit of an internet sensation. There's a AFL meme page. It's called something like the Scott Lucas Super Boot. I'm not sure if you're aware with the internet.
No. I'm not great at the technology side of things, but the guys at work do send them around. Yeah. So I've been made aware of them, and maybe my kids a couple of times have said
We'll give you a quick look as well.
Memes of you. Rosa bricks of bread and water. So Lucas kicks.
It's great. It's great for the ego. Don't worry about that.
I
I've seen. Don't worry, I've seen a couple of them.
Well, what about your colleague Jared Waitley? I mean, he made the headlines. He got in a bit of a Twitter kerfuffle about a fake tweet that got circulated. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, no, I did.
Probably joke around in the office.
No, well, it was interesting because I've heard, Jared talk about, just wanting to correct, and then others have said, well, should he have just ignored it? Because when you say it's not me, they double down. It's a really interesting, and it's a little bit like, on a far more serious level when, and it's unfortunate, but, someone makes a racist comment about one of our Indigenous or multicultural players, and it's often a point of discussion. Do you ignore it? Do you call them out? Or does that add fuel to the fire? And I don't have the answer to it other than it's just, all that can be good about social media. There's just as much that can be really disappointing and
well said, Dad.
Rubbish.
Exactly. There's no barrier. There's nothing stopping you from,
No, you hide behind it and say whatever you like. And, it's really disappointing.
Well, Scott, we want to finish off with a few listener questions. The Tom on Q&A has been very eager to talk to you today, Scott. So I want to read the first one out. This is Liam from Tullamarine. Who was the hardest player you ever played on? Who are the gun defenders that spring to mind? Your Glenn Archer, Mel Michael, Justin Leppish, Matthew Scarlett types.
Yeah, the ones that I got, because with Lloydie, sometimes he often got Scarlett. Archer, yes. Max Hudson at St Kilda.
Yes, terrific.
Craig Bolton at Sydney.
Lachlan from Essendon. Who was the best brawler/boxer/fighter within the club during your playing days?
I reckon Michael Long.
Longy.
Yeah, fast.
We saw that on the field
Fast
sometimes.
hands.
Probably too often.
Yeah.
Joe from Essendon. What does Scotty think of the modern forward? Surely he can't be pleased with all the poor goal kicking.
I think that's fair. It's a tough game. I think they work on it a lot, but it's a little bit like when I jump to the defence of goal kickers, I talk about putting. Has putting got significantly better over the years? When you've got a skill like that, there's margin for error, hand-eye, a lot can go wrong. It's not as easy as it looks. Like, no one has 18 putts on a golf course, do they? No one one-putts every hole. Goal kicking's a little bit the same. Yeah, it's a tough skill. Should it be better? Yes, at times. Probably more players that aren't experts are shooting for goal. So perhaps a greater proportion years ago of those shooting for goal. So maybe Lockett has 30% of St Kilda shots at goal or 40% in a game. So you've got 40% of the kicks for goal are by the best goal kicker of all time, whereas now we're seeing mids, halfbacks, etc., shooting for goal. So maybe that's another element to it as well.
Yeah, and I expect like fatigue would play a part.
Fatigue.
You're playing a totally different brand to what they did 20 years ago.
Up and back,
That's
you can
right.
shoot for goal under fatigue more, no question. Whereas, the bear in the square could just stand there, take a
Exactly.
mark, shoot for goal.
Scotty, I've got a quick little questionnaire for you. We're going to do with all our guests that come on. Favourite sport outside the one you played professionally?
It was always cricket. Basketball's not far behind now.
Is that because your daughters played basketball? Do you fancy yourself as a bit of an Andrew Gaze in your day?
No, I'm no good. Kids play and just enjoy the game. Yeah.
I'm a big basketball fan as well.
Yeah. NFL I like from a point of view.
Yep.
Yeah. And
It's a good
that's
watch.
all on the back of pay TV, isn't it? Like the exposure to the NBA now and, NFL.
Who do you support in the NFL?
Always Patriots.
Good man.
Yeah, Brady, man.
Yeah, massive Brady man as well. He's
Yeah,
probably my favourite athlete. Favourite movie of all time?
Most go Shawshank Redemption. That's very good. Godfather's hard to beat.
Great film.
I'm one of the few that like the first one better than Godfather 2.
Yeah,
Let's
I'm
go
the
Godfather
same.
2, whereas I like the first.
Favourite sportsman growing up?
Growing up,
So I say
Gary,
favourite sportsman growing up, Scott?
Gary Ablett, Dean Jones.
Dino was absolute legend. If you weren't a footballer, what have you ever been?
I reckon a builder.
Builder. Okay.
Yeah. Because I did the building apprenticeship.
Oh, that's
If
right,
I didn't
yeah.
get involved, I would have continued to do that.
Yep.
Favourite holiday destination?
You've got to go with the place you've been the most. Probably two. Noosa and Bondi.
Pretty good options. I'm heading up to Cairns this week, so it should be a nice little 7 days in Palm Cove. Favourite way to unwind besides listening to the Time One podcast?
Yeah. Don't mind gardening.
Gardening.
Yeah.
Get your hands dirty.
Yeah, don't mind it. Don't think. Like, you unwind, you don't really think about it.
It's a bit therapeutic.
Yeah, it is. Just pull the weeds or do the watering. Yeah, I'll go gardening.
Finally, who's the biggest influence on your career?
Well, I think your family are for most initially. I mean, they're the ones that drive you around and sort of foster that love for the game in some shape or form. But you sit down and you're watching the footy with family or they introduce you. My junior coaches, junior teammates, I reckon. And I reckon the coaches is a big thing. As my own children have played sport, you just observe it. And so many kids, their love or disappointment in the game is often driven through their interactions with the coach. He's just so important in all sports that, a good coach experience can love the game for life, or an adverse experience, maybe the love diminishes as you stop playing. So I was lucky. I had great junior coaches, and then, of course, Sheeds. Gave me my first game, gave me my start.
Just quickly, what was the impact of Sheedy on your career, and what was your relationship like when you played together? When he played, when you were playing and he was coaching you, sorry?
Sheeds was, well, it's silly to say different because he's the only coach I had. But I reckon if you looked at coaches now and how I think they, it's very much working. And young players are very different now. So there's not a lot of feedback when I played. Sheeds would leave you to own your own devices and let you figure it out most of the time. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that aspect. But, he gave me my start. He continued to pick me and provided a lot of support to me.
Well, Scott, I just want to finish off with one last thing. I'd like to make some big predictions here. We have to put ourselves under the pump. What's your top 8 in order to finish the year with 6 rounds left? How do you see it unfolding?
In order, you want the top 8?
Yes.
Collingwood, Port, Brisbane, Melbourne, Geelong. Who else is in the mix there?
So you've got the Doggies, you've got the Saints, you've got the Bombers currently in the top 8.
Probably Adelaide as well.
Yes, and the Giants just bubbling
Teetering.
under the 8.
Yeah.
I'll go Dogs, Bombers, Blues.
Think the Blues are going to make it?
Well, I've put no thought into it. It's on the spot.
It's pretty.
That's usually this show, actually.
Carlton are playing some good footy at the minute. Giants have done nothing wrong. It's going to come down to fixtures, I reckon.
Well, they actually play each other in the last game. So
There you go.
yeah.
Premiers.
Hard to go past the Pies at the moment.
Would it be similar to 99? Would it be a massive upset if Collingwood didn't win?
Yeah, I think so.
I refuse to hear that.
Well, I tell Nick this every week. He doesn't listen to it. He thinks they're the underdogs.
We play better as the underdogs. I don't want to take any
Of course,
sort of...
every Collingwood supporter will be saying
I've
that.
seen
They're
too
the
much.
clear favourite.
Brownlow.
Geez, Nick Dacos would be hard to run down. He might have enough votes now.
He might actually
be close to it.
Coleman medal. So I think is it Curnow is first
Curnow
and Tex is second.
Curnow.
Curnow. Norm Smith.
Well, if you think Collingwood are going to win, and if you think Dacos has had 10 best ons out of
Be close to it.
17, 18 games, I'm just an odds man. I'll go the odds.
Yep.
Dacos.
Well, I think this only happened once, was it? Dustin Martin in 2017 to win the Brownlow and the Norm Smith and a premiership medal. Jeez, this kid's in his second year of football. Have you ever seen anything like this?
No. There hasn't. We don't have a second year. What, Judd win it in his third year?
Third year, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I reckon he was pretty special in his second year in 03.
Yes, he was.
But this is another level of that.
No, I'm just so grateful. The father-son rule exists.
Course,
and
it's a great rule.
Yeah.
It's great. We need a bit of romance in the game, and that, like North Melbourne, although it didn't go their way on Sunday, they had 4 father-sons in. I like that.
Yep. I agree with that.
Quickly before we wrap up, who's the one player outside Harley Reid in this year's draft that we should be talking about more?
Jed Walter.
Can you tell us why? Because I feel like in Victoria,
it's a short half
we don't know
head.
nearly enough about him.
It's a short half head. I reckon 40% of teams would probably take Walter at pick 1, particularly if you need a key forward. And there's enough teams that need another one of those.
Definitely.
He's that good. I would say most of the reason he hasn't come from nowhere, because he would have been a top 5 coming in, but he's firmed up with his performances in the last month. But the main reason, I think, is that he's tied to Gold Coast. So no one gets access to him other than the Gold Coast. They'll take him. So there's not much point. A lot of the talk is the speculation on who gets him, what happens. When you take that out of it, it's like, oh, yeah, he's going to the... Yeah.
He's tied up.
He's tied
There's
up.
no point.
Great player. We'll see him next year in the Gold Coast jumper.
Well, Scott, we're so thankful for you coming in to join us for the episode today. First player to ever appear on the show, and we've got an absolute legend. So it's been an absolute delight to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Pleasure, gents.